I'm not ashamed.
Why was Israel to take double the amount of bread on the sixth day of the week? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Exodus chapter 16. We're going to be reading from verses 22 to 26. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Exodus chapter 16, beginning at verse 22. And so it was on the sixth day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Then he said to them, "This is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves all that remains, to be kept until morning." So they laid it up till morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. Then Moses said, "Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find any in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none." In this episode, we still find Israel in the wilderness of sin. The wilderness is in what we would call Saudi Arabia today, in between Elam, the place where Israel had come from, and the region of Sinai. While here, the children of Israel complain to Moses that they do not have food, and that Moses has brought them out into the wilderness to die. This is probably less than 2 weeks after the Red Sea crossing, which not only shows how short Israel's memory is, but their lack of faith in God as well. God hears Israel's cries and promises them to provide bread in the morning and quail in the evening. God's instructions through Moses and Aaron as to how this bread and quail was to be collected are as follows. The quail would only come in the evening, so they needed to collect it in the evening. In the morning, they would find dew on the ground, and when the dew lifted, they would find a small round substance as fine as frost on the ground. This would be the bread that the Lord provided. When Israel collected this bread, they were to take only what they needed for the day. To help them understand what each person needed, each person was rationed an omer of this bread. An omer is about 2.3 to 3.64 liters, or 0.6 to 1 gallon. So if you had a family of 3, it would be 3 omers, and if you had a family of 10, it would be 10 omers. In our last episode, we found that Moses commanded the children of Israel not to keep any bread for the next day, for God would provide them new bread. Some of the children of Israel didn't listen to Moses and found that in the morning, the bread from the previous day had worms in it and stunk. Moses was angry with Israel for not obeying the Lord's commands, an emotion that would, in the book of Numbers, get him into trouble, as it concerned another situation. So coming to today's reading, we have the events of the 6th day of the week. Early in the chapter, they were told on the 6th day of the week, they were to take double the amount of bread. Most Bible students would know that this is because the 7th day of the week was the Sabbath day, a day of rest. However, up until this point, mankind was not commanded to keep the Sabbath. In Genesis chapter 2, verses 2 and 3, we read, "And on the 7th day God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made." Yes, God sanctified or set apart the 7th day because he rested on the 7th day, but he never gave that command to man to keep. Read the entire book of Genesis, and you will find nobody commanded to rest on the Sabbath day. In fact, the word Sabbath, which means intermission, is used for the first time here in Exodus chapter 16, verse 13. Up until that point, God never commanded man to keep a physical day of rest. However, he was going to command it of the Israelites under the law of Moses, a rest that is a foreshadowing of the spiritual rest that Christians have in Christ, according to Hebrews 4, verses 1 to 11. In relation to what we have recorded here in Exodus 16, it meant that Israel was to collect 2 days' worth of bread on the 6th day of the week, what we would call Friday, so that they had enough bread for the next day. They were to bake and boil what they would need for that day, but keep the rest until the next day. Doing so did require faith on Israel's part, because any bread that had been left until the next day up to this point had been infested by worms and stunk. Israel had to trust that that wouldn't happen the next day. Israel did do what Moses had commanded, and God kept his word. The bread was good to use that day. They were told to eat the bread that day, for there would be none found in the field, for that was the Sabbath day of rest, a holy day to the Lord. This pattern would be repeated each week, so long as God fed the children of Israel in the wilderness. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Exodus chapter 16, verses 27 to 36, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
Of his cross.